From the deserts of Saudi Arabia to the mountains of Afghanistan, from training camps to the Abbottabad compound, Osama bin Laden's journey reshaped the 21st century. His life ended in silence, but his shadow still remains, and the world still lives with the consequences. We have all heard of him, the world's most wanted man, Osama bin Laden, the face of global terror. On May 2, 2011, U.S. Navy SEALs killed bin Laden in a daring raid on his compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. This was the culmination of a decade-long global manhunt that began after the September 11th attacks in the United States. So who was Osama bin Laden? What made him the most feared man on the planet, and how did he die? Join me as we explore the story of this infamous terrorist and his legacy. Osama bin Mohammed bin Awad bin Laden was born on March 10, 1957 in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Bin Laden grew up in a wealthy Muslim family and was the 17th of 54 children. His father, Mohammed bin Awad bin Laden, was a businessman and one of the richest men in Saudi Arabia. The family lived in a large mansion in the affluent district of Al-Awliya. Bin Laden received a traditional Islamic education at home in his early years, but later attended a private school in Jeddah. He then enrolled in King Abdulaziz University in Jeddah, where he studied civil engineering. However, bin Laden was more interested in religious studies than engineering, and he soon left university to join the growing jihad movement in Afghanistan. The Soviet Union had invaded Afghanistan in 1979, and bin Laden saw this as an opportunity to fight against the communist superpower. In 1980, bin Laden traveled to Pakistan, and then crossed into Afghanistan to join the Mujahideen. The Afghan fighters resisting the Soviet occupation, Osama bin Laden was a charismatic leader and excellent organizer, and he quickly rose through the ranks of the Mujahideen, established the AlQaeda network to coordinate the efforts of various jihadist groups in Afghanistan. Bin Laden also attracted foreign fighters to the Afghan cause, including many Arabs from the Middle East. The Soviets were eventually driven out of Afghanistan in 1989, but bin Laden remained in the country. He declared jihad against the United States in 1996. Accusing the U.S. of supporting the Afghan government, bin Laden also demanded the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Saudi Arabia. This was a reference to the 1991 Gulf War, when U.S. troops had occupied Saudi Arabia to drive Iraq out of Kuwait. The presence of U.S. troops in Saudi Arabia, which is home to Islam's holiest sites, was seen as a grave insult by bin Laden and other Islamic extremists. In August 1998, bin Laden's AlQaeda launched a deadly attack. The attacks were retaliation for the U.S. presence in Somalia. America's military campaign in Somalia, called Operation Restore Hope, aimed to end the Somali civil war and deliver humanitarian aid to the starving population. But it also involved fierce fighting between U.S. troops and Somali warlords. The embassy's bombings were the first major attack claimed by AlQaeda, a sign of things to come. The September 11th attacks were a turning point in world history. The scale and sophistication of the attacks shocked the world. And in their aftermath, the United States would go on to invade both Afghanistan and Iraq, starting the longest wars in American history. Osama bin Laden became public enemy no one. He was accused of planning and financing the attacks. Despite being elusive, bin Laden released audio and video messages claiming responsibility for the attacks and justifying them as retaliation for U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East. He harbored in Afghanistan under the protection of the Mujahideen's regime. The Mujahideens refused to hand him over to the U.S. despite international pressure. So in October 2001, the U.S. invaded Afghanistan, ousting the Mujahideens from power and sending bin Laden into hiding. In the ensuing years, bin Laden continued to evade U.S. forces. He was known to move around frequently and had many safe houses. His couriers would travel ahead of him, checking for signs of U.S. surveillance before moving him to a new location. Bin Laden kept a low profile, avoiding detection and only rarely communicating with the outside world. During his time in hiding, bin Laden gave few interviews, but his words were carefully chosen and carried significant weight. He used these rare appearances to express his views on a range of topics from politics to religion. Bin Laden was a charismatic and silver-tongued speaker, and his words often resonated with his followers. One notable interview was given to the Arabic newspaper Al-Watan in 2002. In it, bin Laden defended his actions and criticized the U.S. for its policies in the Middle East. He also discussed his personal life, including his religious beliefs and family. Another interview was conducted by the British journalist John Randall in 2003. Bin Laden spoke about the war in Iraq and his views on the conflict. He also addressed accusations that he had links to AlQaeda, although he denied any direct involvement. One of bin Laden's last interviews was with the Qatar-based broadcaster Al Jazeera in 2004. In it, he discussed a range of topics, including the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and his views on the war on terror. These interviews provided a rare glimpse into the mind of a man who had become synonymous with terror. They showed a charismatic and articulate leader who was deeply committed to his beliefs. Bin Laden's words may have been carefully chosen and controlled, but they still offered a window into the complex and controversial figure who had captivated the world's attention. And then there were the videos. Videos like this one, which depicted bin Laden addressing his followers or issuing threats against the U.S. These videos often showed him in a cave or other remote location, surrounded by his followers. They were intended to intimidate and scare his enemies while inspiring his followers. The videos were a key part of bin Laden's propaganda machine. By controlling the images and message, he was able to shape how he was perceived by the world and maintain his status as a powerful and elusive figure. On May 2, 2011, a team of U.S. Navy SEALs raided the compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan, where bin Laden was hiding. The raid was conducted by the U.S. without the knowledge of the Pakistani government. During the raid, bin Laden was found and shot dead by U.S. forces. The news of bin Laden's death sent shockwaves around the world. For many, it was a moment of relief and closure after a decade of fear and uncertainty. Governments and people around the world celebrated the news. In New York City, people gathered outside the U.S. consulate to cheer and wave American flags. But not everyone was happy with the news. Some saw bin Laden as a martyr and a hero. They believed that he was simply fighting back against Western imperialism and aggression in Muslim countries. They also criticized the U.S. for carrying out the raid on Pakistani soil without the permission of the Pakistani government. They saw it as a violation of Pakistan's sovereignty. Whatever people's views on bin Laden, there is no doubt that his death was a significant moment in history. It marked the end of a decade of war and terrorism and brought a sense of closure to many. Following bin Laden's death, his body was buried at sea to prevent it from becoming a shrine for extremists. Although bin Laden's body was never recovered, the U.S. government released photographs of the raid to prove that bin Laden was dead. The images showed bin Laden's body sprawled on the floor of the compound. They were graphic and disturbing images, but they were also a powerful symbol of the end of an era. There are conflicting accounts of how bin Laden died. The official U.S. account is that bin Laden was shot dead by U.S. forces during the raid on his compound. However, some reports suggest that bin Laden may have been unarmed and that he was executed by U.S. forces. There have also been reports that bin Laden's body was mutilated by U.S. soldiers, although these claims have not been verified. The circumstances surrounding bin Laden's death remain a source of debate and controversy, and conspiracy theories abound. Some believe that the U.S. government staged the raid and that bin Laden is still alive and hiding somewhere. Others believe that the U.S. government is hiding the truth about bin Laden's death and that he was not killed during the raid. But despite the conspiracy theories, the evidence suggests that bin Laden is indeed dead. There is no doubt that he was killed during the raid on his compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. The question is, how did he die? Was he shot dead during the raid, or was he executed by U.S. forces? The answer to this question may never be known for sure. Bin Laden's death may have brought an end to his life, but his legacy continues to live on. Bin Laden's ideas still attract followers, and the continued threat of terrorism means that the world is still living with the consequences of bin Laden's actions, whether he was a hero or a villain. There is no doubt that Osama bin Laden was one of the most influential figures of the 21st century. His death was a major event in world history, but his legacy and the impact of his actions continue to be felt today.